the previous episode, as I scrambled for mine by unlocking the car door. It was too late. The car carried over the cliff face, and before I knew it, we hit the dark water, splitting the black glass-like surface with tremendous force. I should have died then, but an airbag took the brunt of my impact. Welcome to ChronicleVibe, your channel, your place to escape from the reality. Bedtime, Whitehouse, Part 9. I should have died then, but an airbag took the brunt of my impact. Although I still managed to scrape my head across the door frame, dazed, I look around. The sound that I heard coming from the thing was malformed yet familiar. The squeal of some demonic child soon gave way to the anguish and rage of an insane intelligence which knew that it faced almost certain death. The water was frozen and poured in through the now twisted open car door with such force that it winded me. I gasped for air as my unwilling prey now did. It writhed and twisted as it looked for an exit. Spying the open door, it pulled itself through the water towards me. I curled up my fist and smashed it into that thing's face. Pieces of rotten flesh flacked off under the impact as a dark black liquid oozed from the resulting wound. Again, it attempted to get past me, and I knew that to keep that in the car long enough to drown, that I would have to die with it. I felt numb as the frozen water slipped over my chin. My heart struggled against the cold, and with a sudden surge, I was submerged and had breathed my last. I held my breath, but only to compose and ready myself for an icy, suffocating death. I hoped that it would not be painful. My thoughts returned to Mary and my family. An all-consuming sense of sadness and despair overwhelmed me. But as I struggled with that thing trying to get past me and through the door, grabbing and flailing with its arms, I looked down and saw it. Its leg was trapped between the dashboard and floor of the car by the impact of the fall. And although it could move, it could not live. I turned immediately for the door. I could barely see but a foot in front of me in that black water, but there was enough moonlight to light my way. Just as I got to the door, the rat grabbed hold of me and pulled me back to it. It had given up all hope of escaping, but it wanted to drown me with it. We fought for what felt like an age in that cold, bitter grave as the car slowly sank deeper and deeper into the darkness. I could now feel my body pleading with me to take a breath, to exhale my last gasp of air and then inhale the frozen water. I'm happy to say that I used my wits to get out of such horrible fate. Orientating my body, I pushed my feet against the dashboard with enough force to at last escape its slippery grasp. I do not remember much else, bar the anguish and hate-filled scream that my tormentor let out as I left it to die at the bottom of the icy lake. I found myself walking through the wilderness, cold, wet, but alive. The wound in my shoulder slowed me down, but I kept the bleeding at bay by applying pressure to it with my other hand. It took me 2 hours to walk home, and I am amazed that I did not collapse from exhaustion or hypothermia. When I saw the familiar sight of the street that I live on, I was filled with a sense of accomplishment, a sense of pride and triumph. I had beaten that thing once and for all. That is until I went inside my house and found a trail of large, wet footprints leading from the front door to my bed. This belief took me, despair so sharp and so overwhelming that I am unable to convey it with mere words. It was lying in my bed, waiting, a white sheet covering its emaciated body from sight. The human mind is a wonderful thing. Just as you believe your body has reached a level of exhaustion that it cannot recover from, that your emotions are so frayed that you feel you cannot continue, a thought springs as if miraculous from a weary mind. Let it rest for now. I quietly crept through the dark and picked up my wallet, which I had left on a small coffee table in the center of my living room. Leaving the door unlocked, I left to attend a new plan and returned an hour later with a moment's preparation. I slipped into the spare room. There I lay in that unsullied bed, waiting. I was sure that this was the endgame, that instead of toying with me, it would come for the kill. How it had escaped the watery grave, I did not know, but I would be damned if it would escape again. I could only hope that it would sense me from my other room. I closed my eyes, pretending to be asleep. Time lumbered onwards. And although I fought it, exhaustion finally took me, sending me into a deep slumber. I woke with its hand around my neck. It coughed and spluttered on top of me. A rancid black liquid dripping on my face as it oozed from its facial wounds. I struggled, gasping for air and hoping that I had the strength in me to escape its grasp, but it was too strong, and my hands could not grip it with any sense of conviction, as it seemed to be dripping wet from its plunge into the lake. It may not have seemed rational at the time, but as my vision dimmed and the last light of consciousness extinguished within me, I did as so many animals do in their last moments. I played dead. Lying motionless, holding my breath, it shook me violently by the neck and then released me. I waited for my moment, my last chance to destroy this thing. Its labored breathing relaxed slightly, and it seemed to stare at me almost quizzically. I waited still for a shift of weight which might have let me throw it to the ground. Leaning down close to me, its wide, crumbling sneer puckered, gathering its putrid saliva in its mouth and in what was left of its cheek. It then showed utter contempt for the living and the dead. It spat its festering fluid onto my face, the remnants dripping down onto me through a hole in its jaw. I wanted to scream, to do anything to remove such a vile smear on my skin, but I dared move. The time was not right. Leaning in closer, it prodded and scratched at the wound in my shoulder, the pain shearing through my body. With all of my resistance, I remained motionless. Then, it slowly and patiently slid two of its long, distended fingers into my mouth. The taste was overwhelming, rancid, rotten, dead. The arthritic clicking of its knuckles shook my resolve as it arched its back in glee. It suddenly pushed its fingers deep down into my throat. I gagged, an instinctive reaction. Instead of being shocked, a garbled laugh emanated through its broken teeth as it thrust its finger deeper into my mouth. I felt its cold, hard flesh scraping against the inside of my throat, pleading without words for it to stop. In our darkest of moments, we sometimes find our true strength. I rolled to my side, using its weight against it, and finally managed to break free. I fell onto the floor, its long reaching grasping at my feet. I kicked and screamed and at last was free. It stared at me, only for a moment, rising up on top of the bed, its brittle bones cracking under its own force. It now towered tall and gauntly, ready to pounce. Since I was a child, I had been a victim. It had terrorized me, taken my innocence, attacked Mary, and broken my life. I would not stand for it anymore. Sometimes the most dangerous prey is the one who can outthink you, the one that lulls you into a false sense of dominance or superiority, the one who has conquered any fear of you with a sense of anger and betrayal. It had fallen into my trap, one convinced by logic, reason, and an understanding of the world through the eyes of a scientific mind. Fire cleanses all. As it groaned, shrieked, cracked, and contorted, readying itself to pounce, in one swift motion, I removed a blanket from the floor, revealing a bucket filled with gasoline, which I had bought in that short time of preparation. I threw it as hard as I could, the liquid splashing all over that horror and the bed. It grinned at me, mocking my very existence, making light of my pain and the agony it had caused. From my pocket, I pulled out a lighter, lit it, and threw it onto that wretched thing. It writhed and screamed in agony, parts of its flesh crumbling away, shearing into nothing in front of my very eyes. I almost felt sorry for it. Let it burn. The fire got out of hand. Thankfully, a neighbor heard the screams and saw the smoke, calling the fire brigade. I remember nothing of how I escaped. I spent several hours in hospital, being treated for light smoke inhalation and painful burns to my hands. It still hurts as I type, but as with many superficial wounds, they will heal. Perhaps there will be a few scars, but I can live with that. The police arrested me shortly afterwards, believing me a murderer. They suspect that I killed someone in that fire and find it entirely suspicious that I have a deep wound in my shoulder and scratches over my body. I've been told not to stray far in case they wish to ask me further questions, but they can ask away. I doubt they will believe my answers. They found no remains nor any evidence that someone else was there, bar a strange outline of a figure etched deep into the bed and wall. It looked as though whatever had been there attempted an escape, but I do not think it accomplished that. A weight has now been lifted from my shoulders, one which I now realize was always there since I was a child. In fact, I believe that thing had an effect on me, even from distance. And now that is gone, I feel whole again. I am devastated that I have lost Mary, and my house can be written off as I'll probably be charged with arson after they realize I started the fire, which means I can kiss goodbye to any insurance claim. My hands ache, as does my shoulder, but my spirit does not. I am writing this from a hotel room. It's small and unassuming, but it will suit my purpose. Tonight, I intend to sleep and dream, as I did as a child before the wretch invaded my life. I believe that it was my rationality which saved me, my logical thought which allowed me to destroy such an evil, but I will never escape the conclusion that there is much more to life beyond the veil out there in the darkness. It is a world I have seen and do not care to revisit, but tonight I will rest, and tomorrow I will build my life again, with the confidence that my unwelcome guest is gone forever. I can feel it. I know it. It will take time for me to adjust, and perhaps my mind will play a trick or two along the way. It is difficult to abandon the paranoia of a lifetime. I must learn to accept my safety once again. I refuse to be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my days, but I will always be cautious, as I was when I was in the hospital this morning, lying on a bed in a quiet ward. I thought I felt the bed shake for the briefest of moments, but I know that it was my just imagination. I am glad I have written down my experiences. It has illuminated much about myself to me, and most importantly, should anyone ever, God forbid, find themselves in a similar situation, then maybe you will know what to do. Now, it is bedtime, and I must rest, for I have never known a weariness such as this. Good night, and sleep tight. Bedtime by Michael Whitehouse. This was the final part, and with this, we're ending the story here. Next weekend, I'll bring a new story for you guys. If you like the story and love the series, please hit the like button and comment, and don't forget to share. And if you want to stay connected and listen to this kind of stories and series, then hit the subscribe button. Happy weekend, guys. Have a great time. Keep your imagination alive.